Hello, everyone. Now, official welcome to our Q&A session today. My name is Sonia. I'm an investment analyst and community manager here at Ivor. And our mission at Ivor is to support the world's brightest minds, so maybe you, to solve the world's biggest problems. And as a first of its kind, we therefore combine an entrepreneurship academy with an early stage VC firm to help entrepreneurial people like you build impactful tech companies. But we'll introduce Ivor in more detail later on and especially give you an overview of the Post-Idea Fellowship, one of our programs here at Ivor and the focus of today's session. But of course, this is a Q&A session designed for you, so feel free to ask your questions during this web talk. You can just ask them here in this live stream. I already see lots of hellos from all over the world, and we will try to tie in as many questions as possible after our presentation. Now, Daniel, let's begin. I'd first like to introduce you to our CEO and co-founder at Ivor, Daniel Dippold. You can see him right next to me here on screen. And Daniel has been an entrepreneur since he was 19 years old. And just to give you a glimpse into his achievements, he was named Top Talent Under 25 in the EU and initiated the world's largest community of young entrepreneurs and unicorn founders, Sigma Squared Society. And moreover, he co-founded his third company, New Now. And with New Now, he was able to achieve 7-figure sales within the first year. And today caters to clients such as Deutsche Bank and Philips. So Daniel, you have a very entrepreneurial journey yourself. I hand it to you now and let you introduce yourself in a bit more detail and then let you walk us through your presentation.
Fantastic. Great to be here. Really excited to do this on YouTube. I think I was speaking earlier. Not sure if you heard me. If you did hear me, you're gonna hear me make that comment twice. I am doing this for the first time, so apologies up front, if anything goes wrong here on YouTube. But I'm gonna share my screen. Yes, it works. Fantastic. Okay. So today we are going to talk about the Post-Idea Fellowship only. Very important, we will have another webinar about the Pre-Idea Fellowship at the 25th of April, just FYI. So before we talk about anything, very important to state at this point, this is only Post-Idea. We will not talk about anything we do in Pre-Idea. There will be an entire session just devoted to this topic in 2 weeks from now. And a quick agenda overlook for today. I've just done an intro. So as a second step, I want to explain Ivor in general. So in general, what do you get out of being part of Ivor? Because this is just part of the Post-Idea Fellowship. Then I'm going to specifically dig into the Post-Idea Fellowship. As you know, we have 2 programs, the Post-Idea Fellowship and the Pre-Idea Fellowship. And then we're going to do a Q&A in which I answer any question about the program that you might have. And Sonia is going to make me aware of the questions. So she's quickly going to read them to me because she's also on YouTube and I'm going to answer. This is how today is going to go down. And to start with Ivor, I of course have to start with a brief description of how we see ourselves, right? This is always an objective opinion. And we really see us as a special place where the most extraordinary people find education, network, and capital to conquer the world and build an outstanding venture. And this is, the 3 pillars I really want to focus on during the next couple of slides. First of all, I want to talk a little bit about the education and how we think about education in Ivor. Secondly, the network. What kind of network can you expect? What will you get out of Ivor in terms of access to human capital? And then lastly, obviously, actual capital. What is the funding you can expect and what are the terms? And let me begin with education. Education in entrepreneurship it's really tough to define. First of all, I believe it's something you can't teach academically. You can teach math and physics academically. It makes lots of sense to study formulas, But in entrepreneurship, you can't really do this because it's so practical. If you want to teach someone how to build a table, you can't give them the physics of what makes a table actually stand, and they're going to build it. They're not going to know the right movements. They're not going to be able to cut the wood in the right way. This is all practical stuff. This is like me explaining to you what a great leader does. And I can academically break this down, but this doesn't make you a great leader. You can't just, by understanding the physics, have the craft in your hands to build a fantastic table. That doesn't work. Similarly, just by me explaining to you what a great leader is, you won't just go out there and be a great leader. It's when people provoke you, when you are, like in physical pain and so on, when it really, comes down to you being a great leader or not, and making the right decisions in those difficult moments. And that is just something you need to learn on the job. And that is how we see entrepreneurship. You just need to build a venture. Everyone who joins EWOR builds the venture. And that education part has been one in the past where people said, hey, I actually just want to learn the stuff about entrepreneurship. I actually don't want to build a venture. Then EWOR is the wrong place for you, if that is the case. We believe the only way you can actually teach this is by you building a venture. So we expect you after this program to have a fully fledged venture, potentially with the first employees, potentially funded already by venture capital, and already, like having a product that works and growing. Like this is what we expect you to have by the end of the program. And post that year, obviously, we believe that this will be even greater. We are currently having a bunch of examples. We have one deep tech founder who probably won't have a working product by the end of the program because it's deep tech and it's going to take him 2 to 3 more years. But he's probably going to have a couple of millions in funding by the end of the program. In addition to that, we have one guy who's building a B2B SaaS tool in the banking industry, and he's probably going to come out of this program with a couple $100K in annual recurring revenue. So it really depends on the business you're building, but the education part is really fitting towards your venture, and it needs to fit, otherwise it's not working out. Then, of course, what are the kind of courses you can expect, from fundraising to like building a proper product to no-code prototyping to like building a team, hiring people, and so on. Everything is on our platform. So you can just do the courses online, and then you actually join the meetings with us, and we will be there every week. Every single week, you will have multiple touch points with us, the EWOR founders, investors, mentors, and so on from the network. And we will discuss the things you will actually learn online. This is a concept called flipped learning, and it is actually way more effective than the typical classroom principle, where like 50 people sit in one room or 1,000 people in some universities and just listen to one teacher who's just preaching something. So that is very important for us to note. Most of the content consumption happens online, and then the actual discussion happens in the classroom. And this is how we think education works. Another very important concept, and I'm going to come to the network topic and so on in a second. I have a couple of slides for this, is that this is really built for founders by founders. And this is also where I want to introduce myself. But first, I want to introduce the other people like who are part of the EWOR leadership team, or at least some of them, to give you a feeling of who's actually building EWOR. Because what is very important for us is that in Europe, there is a program that is actually built by entrepreneurs. There's so many programs out there. They're built by professors, McKinsey consultants, and this is great, but they've not built a company, and they're probably not going to teach you how to build a company because they've never done it. And for us, it is really important, like that the people who are helping you to build a venture have actually built a venture. So Alex has founded multiple ventures. One of them was called ProGlove, and it was sold last year for 500 million euros, $500 million. And he also was one of the co-inventors of the design thinking method when he was one of the managing directors of IDEO, which is a firm that invented design thinking. And he's also built a school, the D School in Potsdam, which is a pendant to the D School in Stanford. And I think that makes him an incredible person for what we're building here, because he set up a school. He has definitely built up ventures. ProGlove was a hardware venture, quite untypical these days. And he knows like the design thinking approach, which is like the very early phase of how do you actually come up with an idea. So especially for the pre-idea fellowship, that's very useful. What have I done? What can I help with? Maybe a couple of notes about myself. The first thing I've built was a deep learning venture. It was called Emoti. We were using convolutional neural networks to determine emotional intelligence proxies based on sound waves. So it was a deep tech venture and was basically just looking at, like how well like does a person come across? How charismatic are they? How well can they work in a team when conversing with other people? So if you're in conversation and we are emitting sound waves, I can use these sound waves to analyze cool stuff. Afterwards, I started angel investing. I have privately invested in around 20, 25 companies by now. I haven't exactly counted. Some of them now worth over 100 million euros. No unicorns yet. I pretty much believe next year it's going to be the first one. That would be really nice. And especially since I'm still in my 20s, I'm quite happy about this. So worked with lots of founders also just, in which I privately invested. Then I've built another machine learning business. Sonia has mentioned this, maybe a little bit more about the product. The product is a B2B SaaS tool that makes it very easy to leverage AI if you are, in a bigger company. So let's say you're Deutsche Bank or you're E.ON or you're Philips and you want to work on budget allocation or dynamic pricing or whatever it is, then we make it very easy for you to no code train a neural network or an XGBoost to actually, like your data, whether it is in your database or Excel or wherever, and base your decisions on that machine learning. And it's going to be visualized in a quite nice manner and a very easy to understand dashboard. We focus lots on explainability of AI, and you're going to be an empowered decision maker. Then I have quite simultaneously actually set up Sigma Squared Society, which became the biggest society for young entrepreneurs in the world. I spun this off of a community called Cairo Society, because we wanted to focus on the nonprofit angle and they wanted to build a fund. And then we've grown super quickly into 35 countries, 11 unicorn companies, 1.5 billion raised by Sigma Fellows, 90% after they've joined the community. And it's been growing quite nicely since then. And we're going to bring out a new website, I think, in the next 1 or 2 weeks. It's still going. I'm chairman still, but I'm no longer involved in an operational manner. Similar for me now, I'm now focusing all of my time on EWOR and a little bit on my private investments. So I really want to make sure, that if we set up such a program for founders by founders, that I have all my time also available for building that program in an authentic manner. And then Flo, our chief investment officer, is also a founder. He also was the business angel of the year. He's done over 60 angel investments already, some of them absolutely incredible. We're going to look into them later. He's also built United Domains, which he sold to 1&1, which especially the Germans out of you should know. He also then built completely bootstrapped Neubau Kompass AG, which became Europe's leading platform for new residential constructions. And he founded a venture capitalist, the first ever Web3 focused venture capitalist in Europe. And I think in terms of financial performance, they're doing really well. They're definitely up in the top quartile of performing investment funds in Europe. So immense pleasure also from my side working with people like Alex and Flo. I'm learning a lot every single day from them. So do I from Berna, Marcel, and Lian. Berna is our COO and head of programs. She founded the first ever privately started contact tracing app, which achieved over 150,000 downloads within the first day after launch. Marcel founded Crypto Valley Society and grew a web page where he was not the founder from 1,000 to 500,000 monthly visitors. And now he's the guy running our analytics and, our application efforts. And some of you might be here today because of magic Marcel has done. And then we have Lian, who has 2 Stanford degrees, around 10 years of experience in the education field, and she is really focused on creating an incredible learning experience for you. She's the one who initiated flipped learning. She's the one who does all of the innovation in terms of, what is how does EWOR think about education? How do you guys actually learn how to build a company? And I think together we are a fabulous team. Obviously, the team is bigger, but what is really important for me to bring across here is that EWOR is built by founders for founders. The next part is the network. I've said we do network, education, and capital, right? So this is the second point now, talking about the network. So there's, I think, pretty much, not all of those, everyone but 3 people in this picture are invested in us. So they also have a, great incentive to support you, because if EWOR gets value out of this, they're also getting value out of this. Paul Müller is one of the guys who's also invested in us. He's a co-founder of Adjust, which sold for 1 billion euros. Lube Miller is a quite famous founder in the green tech area, who's building, also B2B SaaS tool in green tech. That makes, carbon tracking way easier. Max is a chief business officer at Deposit Solutions, which is a unicorn. It's now merged. It was one of the biggest fintech mergers ever, $2 billion companies merging in Europe. Me, I'm CEO at WM Gruppe, former chief experience officer at Deutsche Bank. Jens Wasel built the second largest e-commerce in Europe, KW Commerce, which made over 100 million in revenues. Like Stefan Hohmeister, as a former CMO of T-Mobile, currently built his own company. It's very important for us. And everyone who coaches builds his own company. Eric is one of the people I invested in, recently valued at 150 million euros with this company, just, very shortly after launch. I think that was faster than within a year. So within 1 year, he created a company that became worth over 150 million euros. David, over 100 angel investments, the founding editor-in-chief of Wired. I think he's done 7 or 8 unicorn investments. Nicolas De Santis, the founder of Apodo. Alex Schwörer, the owner of Peri, which is a multi-billion euro firm. The people you will be in touch with will be rather incredible, and they'll expect you to be rather incredible. And that is why we are playing, putting such a high emphasis on the selection, because this system only works if these guys are also excited talking to you. And I believe many of you here bring, to the table what it needs to excite these guys. And that is also really important. It's kind of tit for tat. And when you are starting with EWOR, over the time, we will just naturally introduce you to those guys. There's also a mentoring platform online, so you can just book a call with them whenever you feel like it. But we will also just naturally introduce you at the right point in time, because sometimes it's also a little bit scary talking to a guy who actually built, a firm that's worth over $1 billion. But, we'll help you with that process, and we'll make it very easy and nice for you. And these guys then will be the door openers for you in your later funding rounds. Some of the portfolio companies, that either came out of EWOR, were built by us, or we privately invested in, just to give you a feeling, of what we, have experience with, because you guys are also going to do your due diligence, and you're going to think about, hey, do the EWOR guys actually know the stuff, that I need to know to build my venture? So there's a couple, other companies that I haven't mentioned yet in there, maybe that you might recall. Simple Club is the biggest high school learning app in Germany. They're currently monetizing B2B, over 2 million users. If you are younger, you might know them really well. If you're older, maybe because your kids are using them, but they are the market leader in Germany, and very soon, in my opinion, in Europe. Peak, an IoT infrastructure company in the Web3 space, pretty much my only Web3 layer zero investment, I would say, but absolutely worth it. Outstanding company, and soon gonna cross, I think, the 100 employee mark. Bunch disrupting the OS for kind of private capital investors, also valued at I think a couple dozen million. Coinpanion, like the leading marketplace for crypto ETFs in Europe. Parcelab, I think that was an investment ticket from one of the founders of EWOR that was turned from 50K into 2 million euros. So definitely a worthwhile investment. Foodora, which was like the market leader in food delivery for a while until being sold. Kaya Health, which was founded by the Foodora founder, in which Flo has been the first investor. And I think again in Kaya Health, also I think over 100 employees by now. So I believe we have a good understanding of what makes a venture scale, what gets it to plus 100 employees, what are the steps you need to take, how do you set up the legal structure, how do you approach fundraising, the fundraising strategy, how do you hire the right people, and so on. We've done it ourselves, and we have invested in companies that did it. We believe in a very non-rigid program. I call this no bullshit, no fluff. It's also now on our website. First of all, we do not have an up or out mentality. Once you're part of the EWOR family, you're always part of the EWOR family. That is very important for me to mention, because so many other programs, basically what they do is they look at you, they say, oh, you're not complying to the deadline, you're not fast enough, then you're out. This is not how entrepreneurship works. Sometimes, your hypothesis wasn't true. That doesn't mean you're slow. That just meant, you've tried something, it didn't work out, you've got to try something else. And then if you want to start again, if you want to begin from the beginning, we're here for you to support you at your own pace. Of course, we do have deadlines and, something like a structure, because it needs to be there. But if you need to break out of it, and if it makes sense, we make that possible for you, because that's just how entrepreneurship works in reality. We also not do forced co-founder matching, because it doesn't work, in our opinion. You can't just, you're founding a business for potentially the next 10 years or longer with a person you've just met in a program a couple of weeks ago. No, that process takes longer, way longer, than those couple of weeks of getting to know each other and seeing if something's there. We're not playing roulette anymore. We are trying to set up sustainable businesses. So we are giving you time over the entire program, post-idea fellowship, also very often come with, like existing teams. So you already come with your team, then it's not a problem anyway. And if you apply as a solo founder, we're giving you time over those entire 6 to 10 months to actually choose a co-founder, or potentially do it alone. Totally fine. I just invested in a guy from Italy. He builds a fantastic AI tool. He said, hey, I'm super open, but so far I haven't found anyone who fulfills my standards. And he's currently running solo, and it's totally fine. And we invested anyway. And lastly, no strings attached. The contract you get is a one-pager. And we also don't do that crap where we invest 100,000 euros and then you need to pay us 50,000 back. I know that other programs in Europe are doing that. I think it's not founder friendly. It doesn't make any sense. We don't do that kind of stuff. It's a very clear one-pager. I also highly encourage you to reach out to people we have invested in. They are on our website. I can also explicitly put them in touch with you if you write me on LinkedIn, and talk to them and their experience of us investing. Because if that's not great, don't join our program, right? We need to have something here that's set up for the long term. And it's a fair deal, in our opinion. No upfront fee, a 1.5 million euro cap, which is the highest for anything comparable in Europe. Like the only better valuation you can do if you just go out in the market yourself without any support in doing it, right? And that is it. And we've also realized that people who effectively get higher valuations, like want to work with us. For example, we have just invested in a guy, built the world's largest AI community, was a partner at IBM Ventures, raised 7 million with his venture exited, and he could have gotten a higher valuation. But obviously, the ecosystem brings lots to him. So, he also went with a ticket from Ivor. So also that is something we see more and more often. If you are a serial entrepreneur and you're figuring out, is this the right thing for you? You've already built a business, you've sold one. I believe yes. At our demo day, you will be presenting to 80 plus investors. Your venture will very likely be oversubscribed. And I think, this is definitely worth for a solo or a serial entrepreneur as well. So it's fair. There's no strings attached. Like there's very typical, like you can't write that much on one page, but the typical liquidity preferences, founder vesting, and so on are in there. And that's it. That's EWOR. So maybe a couple of words about the post-idea fellowship specifically. It has a very set structure in that within the first 6 weeks, you have daily sessions with serial entrepreneurs. Everyone who is lecturing at EWOR has built a venture or invested in many successful ventures themselves privately. So when you talk to people, they will all have set up ventures. Like last time we did it with the founder of Lilium, which raised over $1 billion. The fintech unicorn I've mentioned, Just was there. Sold for over $1 billion. The Ecosia founder, Europe's second biggest search engine after Google, gave a presentation, right? The people you are talking to have all built incredible ventures. You'll also be networking and really getting to know your peers. You will be on our platform and learning a shitload of new content, from term sheet negotiations, what is a broad-based anti-dilution clause in my term sheet, to effective prototyping techniques that are quite straightforward. And then we're going to pitch. And this is like a first step. Sometimes we bring in friendly angel investors at this step. And, like maybe we invest, they invest, and so on, and kind of set you up. And the next 4 weeks are just for you to really nail down the pitch for the grand pitch for our demo day, like where there'll be over 80 investors waiting for you. And our key metric at EWOR, I can't guarantee that because I can't forecast the behavior of the investors. But our key metric at EWOR is that every single venture present at that grand pitch will receive funding from those investors, preferably being oversubscribed. So like during those 4 weeks, those 16 weeks and 4 months, we really want to get ready. You've learned what you needed to learn. Then it's up to you to decide where you deep dive. That's what I mean about us being flexible, right? During those 4 months, you need to decide, do you already know how to negotiate term sheets, or is it something you want to look at? Do you already know how to structure a funding round? Have you done it? Or do you want to look at that? Do you already know how to do proper product management? These kind of questions you're going to ask yourself, and it's going to be pretty apparent after those 6 weeks you'll be spending with serial entrepreneurs of where your gaps are. And then you just start filling those gaps in those 4 months. And at this point, you're probably going to be an entrepreneurship superhuman. You know everything you need to know. You're going to leave a fantastic impression with the right investors, and you're going to be able to build a killer business. And then afterwards, it gets really tough, because afterwards you've got the money on your bank account and you actually need to set up a proper business, hire the right people. And that's tough. That's not easy. So far, like a little bit about the post-study fellowship, a couple of important dates maybe. On the 31st of May, the application cycle ends. So you do have time, but I highly recommend. Or is that your part, Sonia?
It would be my part, but I'm okay.
No, apologies for that. You go ahead.
No problem. But thank you very much, Daniel. And now you guys, you've heard a lot about EWOR and our fellowship program. So if that sounds interesting to you, we are very happy to receive your applications. And as Daniel already said, the application cycle is currently open. And I've already been reading the chat on the second screen here and have seen that some asked about the application deadlines. So here you have all the important deadlines on the slide. So our application cycle ends on May 31st, and you will have a first decision by mid-June. And if you have made it to this round, you will need to attend our post-idea selection day on July 10th. And if you've made it through our selection day, the program would start beginning of September 4th to be precise. So feel free to take a screenshot to not forget about the dates. And if you want to apply right away, you can find the link to the application in the video description. So now I've already seen that we have also questions from the audience, and even some people already connecting and sharing their skills. So that's great. Thank you for that. And we will try to tie in as many questions as possible. Some have already asked whether the presentation will be shared or the recording will be available. Yes, this video will stay online for the duration of the application cycle. So if you have any questions on the presentation or want to rewatch it, just feel free to look up this YouTube video. So Daniel, I have a question for you. And I think this one is regarding, because we actually have two programs, the pre-fellowship and the post. And someone is asking whether you can apply for both.
Yeah, you can absolutely apply for both, but it needs to make sense, right? And if you are still on a stage where you don't have any traction, you haven't built much, I would rather recommend you apply for the pre-idea fellowship only. And if you do have already an idea and, you know, like you are having traction and so on, you don't want to do pre-idea fellowship because, you know, you're already having something you're going to work with. If you actually have both, you are working on something that you find promising, but you would also be open to actually go pre-idea and scratch your venture. That is when I would actually get you to apply twice, once for post-idea, once for pre-idea. Initially, we made it very simple for you to just click both. We really want to keep those programs separate as much as possible. So I highly invite you to think about, does it really make sense? And which program makes more sense for me? And, you know, as a gentle or as an idea of how to decide, if you already have traction, you know, if you have built some form of product or you're already at pitch deck stage, you have a clear idea of who your target customer is, what your market looks like, what the market size would be, who your competitors are, go for post idea, right? That is definitely a post idea stage. If you're not yet there, you're not yet understanding the full venture case, and you haven't built anything yet with any traction, then go for pre-idea. If you really want to completely keep both doors open, then fill out two applications.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I've already seen lots of like follow-up questions about the pre-idea fellowship, but for you to know, we have another web talk coming up April 25th. So if you have questions about the pre-idea fellowship, we would highly recommend you to join us in another web talk. So because this is today about the post-idea fellowship. So now my next question would be, we have some questions on the requirements to apply. So someone is asking whether you need a registered business in terms of patent, copyright, and trademarks beforehand.
You don't need that. It helps. It's something nice. You know, if we see a patent and we're like, oh, this is defensible, then this is great. And we're going to look at defensibility, but it's also totally fine to not have this and to just say, I'm a fantastic human being. I have a great skill. I can put something in the world with my vision and skill set. Then we're going to do that too. To give you an example, we've just had a guy from, you know, like initially New York, was a partner there, and a lecturer, I think, at UPenn, and then moved to Barcelona, had a nice idea about building good wall for the elderly, and was able to articulate it very well. There wasn't anything else. There wasn't a slide deck. It was just that idea, but he was, you know, like very adamant about building this, and he had a great skill set that we found was, you know, like really useful in making that come true. So we accepted him, right? So that is one of the examples of where it was much. There was no patent, there was no defensibility. It helps, but it doesn't have to be there.
Great, thank you. So our next questions, or we have lots of questions again on that. How do we select our candidates for the program? Or how do we evaluate a candidate's application? What to be considered?
Yeah, it's always a tough question. You know, I can go very far and tell you exactly what to write, but you know that's also not really possible. In the end, I can quite openly talk about, you know, like what we want to see. So first of all, we want to see you having either one of the two core abilities we believe it needs to build a venture. That is, you know, either you're a seller or you are a builder or you're both. If you're a builder, you should have the technical skill set to build the product. And that depends on the product. So if you have a PhD in physics and you want to build a deep tech venture that needs quite specific physics, then that is good, even though you can't code and you can't do full stack and so on. If you want to build a B2B SaaS tool and you can't do full stack and you're not a seller, I would think about that, because the question of you actually, you know, you actually building a venture that becomes successful without that skill set is going to be low. So we're going to think about, you know, do you actually have the skill set to do that kind of stuff? And the more you can put this into your application and demonstrate to us that you can build things, that you have built things before, that you have the skill set necessary, the better this is. On the seller side, we look more you know, have you sold stuff? Have you initiated things? Have you built your own university club? Have you worked in a role like that, right? Have you done private things in your private life, for example, sports competitions and so on, that show us that you have the resilience needed to kind of sell a venture like this, right? Like, don't only think about profession, think about, you know, what you privately do. And also be honest with yourself, right? 9 out of 10 startups fail. And to a great extent, because people don't know how hard it actually is. And, you know, like at least 5 times a year, I would say you have a moment of absolute emotional breakdown. And, you know, if you don't have the skills of necessary to do this, is going to be even harder. And I would ask myself, you know, it's like, am I personally really a person who over the next 10 years, 5 to 10 years, wants to build such a venture? And if you believe you are, just make it clear to us what kind of skills you have that really get you there, in terms of attitude as well. Obviously, then we're also looking at, you know, like, what have you done in the past? We're not only looking at this. Also very important for me to mention, in the application form, there's a couple of questions. They will, just that one question will invite us to invite you to the interview. So you don't have to excel at every single question. If you don't, you know, if you haven't done like lots of awards, that's totally fine. Like, some people build incredible ventures, they've never won an award ever. Like, we're not going to look at every question and come with the tick box and say like, hey, this, all the answers are great. We're going to look at all the questions, and in every single question, we're going to look at evidence of whether you're a great founder. And that means if 3 of the questions are absolute crap, you could still be invited for the interview. So it's also very important for me to bring across. But if you have achievements, please put in the links, make clear to us what those achievements are, make it number driven, make it percentage driven, so that we know, hey, this person was the top 1%. Sometimes you win an award, but 50% of people win that award, right? We want to know like what percentage actually did win that award. And the more number driven you can make this to us, fantastic. Also, in terms of stuff you've built, make it number driven. How many LinkedIn followers, Instagram followers, how many employees did you have with this? How many volunteers worked for your thing? How long did it exist for? Did it make revenue? Did it raise grants? Can you quantify those grants, right? The more quantitative you make this for us, the more we can objectify, right? Because we are getting, this time we estimate we will be getting 5,000 applications. Last time we were getting 3,000. So we need some objectivity, right? We need some quantification in there to get a feeling for, you know, like what you're actually building there, or what you've built in the past. Sorry, apologies for that. And I think that's, you know, that's it. Just be yourself and bring yourself to the table in the most authentic manner that you possibly can, while providing as much evidence as possible, both qualitative and quantitative. If you do that in a great way, I think it's quite likely that you will at least be invited to the interviews.
Perfect, Daniel. I think that was very valuable information for everyone who wants to apply. So I hope you listen carefully. We have some more questions and we have lots of questions. So I'm sorry if we cannot answer all of them, but we still have like 10 to 15 minutes left. So I'll ask some other questions. And I try to sum up some questions because we had questions about like the idea phase. So some had the impression that it's more focused on tech companies, but are we open to other industries, Daniel?
Absolutely. Anything that's scalable. Obviously, tech is very scalable. That's why we have, a bias to tech. But very honestly speaking, we also have a business model, right? And our business model is to kind of have a share in your business by investing in it. And essentially, the way this works is it's a heavy tail distribution, which means you have lots of things that are very probable, they're here in the middle, and then you have the very improbable events on the sides, and those drive your returns. And that means these tail events, they need to become worth billion euros plus. This is how VC works, right? And it's an unfortunate reality, and I don't like everything that happens in VC, to be completely frank. And we are currently working on an investment structure that would allow us to have way longer investment cycles so that this doesn't matter at all. And then it's going to be even nicer for you. But for now, we are torn to this business model as well. And I want to be fully transparent with you. And if your venture doesn't have the opportunity to become, like a globally scalable venture with over 100 million in revenue within the next 10 years, then it's the wrong venture for us. We are really looking at these globally scalable, huge ventures. This is also what we know, what we've, like ventures that were able to achieve stuff like this is what we invest in, where we know how to fund this kind of stuff. When it comes to a slower growing venture, maybe in a completely bootstrapped way, I also think we are the wrong program because we've built businesses and invested in different kinds of businesses. So in that case, I would actually not encourage you to apply. There's other fantastic government grants and other programs that you can go for. It has to be scalable. Whether it's scalable with or without tech, I personally don't care, but it has to be scalable.
Great, thank you. Maybe you could go into more detail about the funding that is provided for selected companies after the fellowship, since we had some questions on that.
Yeah, let me maybe see if I can. I don't want to make life too complicated for Dana and share my screen again, so she has to cut again. But this is one pager, and very soon, I don't know if we've already put it up on our webpage. If we haven't, it will very soon be up on our webpage. So you can very clearly also read the one pager and the funding terms on our website. We want to be really transparent about this. What it basically says, I will quickly open one for you anyway and make sure that I go through the most important points. So education, you will like get this program, we will educate you and so on. Time commitment, at least 20 hours a week. This is also what you put in there contractually. Company formation within the next 2 months. This is a post-study fellowship, right? For this one, it has to happen fast. Within the next 2 months, you build a company, you register a legal entity. So this is also what you need to do. And then there is no tuition fee, so we don't take any equity in the venture unless we invest. We invest between 75,000 to 150,000. You as the founders can decide how much. Maybe you already know you're going to raise on a 5 million valuation very soon. So you actually want less investment from us to dilute less, because what is actually super valuable to you is our ecosystem, our demo day, the network we bring in. So you can actually decide to get less money from us. And if you want more because you believe you need more, you can opt for more. Once we invest, you can decide. That is how it works. So you decide the amount. The amount will be invested into your venture using either a convertible loan agreement or something that is similar to it. For everyone who does not know exactly what this is a debt vehicle that converts into equity. It's very easy to do that kind of stuff. If you're in Germany, Austria, Switzerland, France, or so on, you actually have to run to a notary if you do an equity round, and that takes time. And honestly, for 100,000 euros, you don't want to run to the notary and like spend a day and draft contracts. You want the money fast. You want to raise a bigger funding round, and then you want to run to the notary once you've actually raised 1 million. So therefore, we make this super easy investment vehicle with whom, like we can invest with a CLA. That's a convertible loan agreement. In the UK, it's called an ASA, Advanced Subscription Agreement. It is not technically a convertible loan, but now we're getting into a little bit too much detail. In the US, it would be a SAFE subscription agreement for future equity, which is pretty much what an ASA is. And these kind of things are used by the best investors out there to provide money fast. And then when there's a future funding round, they get off that funding round. So this is how we actually investing. Then founder vesting, we will require all of the co-founders to vest. That means if you have co-founders, you guys need to agree on a vesting scheme. And if one of them leaves the company early, the equity goes back to the company. This is very important because we've seen so many companies get destroyed by one co-founder leaving, taking all the equity with them, then the other founder not being motivated anymore because they've lost all of the equity, or at least half of the equity. The other co-founder not doing anything, but sitting half of in the world will invest in this, right? So we protect you as the founders, especially those who want to stay in long term, with such a vesting scheme. It's absolutely industry standard to do these kind of vesting schemes right now. Any good VC will do this. They will do it even way more extreme that we do it, so that the VC can also kick you out. Like the later investors, they're going to be hardcore and we're going to prepare you for them, but there's just some things you can't change. Pro rata rights. So whenever we dilute, let's say we have 10% in your venture with all the investments we did, we dilute because you raise another 2 million, then we go down to 8%. We can buy, of course, to the next valuation, we can put in another million to get back to 10%. So this is also what we can do. And then there's, we can cancel the contract. There's no liability. Both parties can use this for PR. So you guys can put this on social media that you're now part of EWOR. We can put you on our website. And that's the contract. It's a very simple one-pager. And those are the funding terms. So when we invest, all the things, that come into play, like the pro rata subscription rights, the vesting, and I hope that made it quite clear. And with the contract on the webpage, I think it will be even clearer in the future.
Well explained. Thank you. Since we have lots of people joining us from all around the world, we had some questions regarding the program and the physical location. Do we need a physical location? Do we have to be in Germany, or is this program fully virtual?
It is primarily remote with lots of physical elements. So for example, if you do go in the pre-idea fellowship, which is not today's topic, I know, but like the partner companies, like they're going to host you, meet you from time to time. You are also part of the EWOR community multiple times a year. We do what we call an EWOR house. An EWOR house will usually start with an EWOR summit or festival, where the entire community comes for 3 days. There will be talks, there will be music, there will be networking. And then we have another 3 weeks, usually between 2 and 4 weeks, where you can just stay at the house, entirely rent-free, all covered by EWOR. You don't have to pay for accommodation. You just stay there and you can connect with the other people. And that's something we do multiple times a year. So you can definitely do that, and you should do that, because if you don't participate in that at all, you're going to miss out. But if it's absolutely necessary because, you are unable to currently get out of your country for whatever reason, and you're building an incredible venture, we're still going to invest. No problem for us. And on top of this, we have a bunch of extra events physically that happen scattered throughout the year, to which you might be invited depending on what you're building. Also industry-specific networking that might also be physical. And on top of this, the entire rest is virtual. The weekly calls are virtual. everything's virtual, but that doesn't mean it's slack you, right? So we really expect you to be there, to come, to show up, to build your venture. And we are not at a size, and we probably never ever will be at a size where we won't notice, right? Everyone who comes in, we expect to have the full focus on building your venture with us. If we realize you are doing this to boost your personal brand, you're not actually interested in building a venture, we will also very clearly, like get into a conversation and talk about this and say, hey, it doesn't look like you're building a venture. This is also not fair to us because we are putting our resources into this to help you. And if you're on a different track, we're going to say goodbye. So even though it's virtual, we are quite adamant about this because we want people in there who are engaging, who are active, and who are serious about actually building a company.
Thanks. Now back to the application, because we had one question to maybe a bit differentiate a bit more. So someone was asking, if I have an existing idea, but it isn't fully fleshed out yet, does it still make sense to join the post-idea fellowship, or should I join the pre-idea fellowship? And I think a lot of people were asking the same.
Yeah, it's a great question. It depends how well you can communicate the potential of the idea. If you haven't fully, fledged out yet your market size, no problem. You can give us an estimate. But, like in the post-idea fellowship application, you are asked to upload a pitch deck. If you can't supply us with a pitch deck where you at least demonstrate to us the potential of this venture, it's very unlikely you get in. So I would rather encourage you to apply for the pre-idea fellowship. If, on the other hand, though, you believe it's fleshed out enough to make us believe that this is an absolute no-brainer and, like the world needs it and you should do it, we should do it, then apply with it, no matter how fleshed out it is.
Great. Now looking at the time, 1 hour is almost up. Let me ask the final question, because people were wondering, can we reapply after this web talk since they got all the new information now?
Reapply?
Reapply, yeah.
Okay, I got that.
Somehow already hand in an application and now want to like change something.
Sure. If you see 2 applications from any of you, like for the same program, we're going to delete the first one. Obviously, we're going to double check if like one of them is drastically incomplete and it's the last one. And yes, it's actual humans looking at your application. Then we might delete the former one, but it's most likely that we delete the first one. So the application we look at is your last one. If you've saved the data, you want to reapply, absolutely do it. If you've come up with a better video, if you've done a public speaking course, you're way better at communicating and you want to redo your video, no problem, apply again.
So good news for all of you. Thank you, Daniel, and thank you to all of you watching and asking so many questions. We hope you enjoyed today's session and will apply to one of our programs, if not already. And also feel free to check out our website, EWOR.io. And as Daniel already mentioned, this web talk today is the start of a whole series. So next you will find our dates for the upcoming web talks. If after today you feel more like the pre-idea fellowship would suit you better, as I mentioned, in 2 weeks on April 25, we will have a session with the pre-idea fellowship as our focus. But other than that, we have even more exciting web talks coming up, mentor sessions, or our fellows sharing some of their success stories. So please feel free to join us in our other web talks. And it would be great to see you there. So now, before I close this talk, last reminder, our application cycle ends May 31st, and you can find the application link in the description box. Now that's for today. Thank you again. Thank you, Daniel, and looking forward to your application. Bye, everyone.